There are stories that live in the water, whispered on the wind and carried in on the tide. In the stretch of sea that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, there is one story that has haunted the waves for more than 2 centuries. It is a tale that begins with a light on the horizon, a light that grows until it takes a shape both impossible and terrifyingly real. For those who have seen it, the vision is unforgettable. A magnificent 3-masted schooner sails full and catching a phantom wind, but the ship is on fire. Flames engulf the rigging and dance along the decks, yet the masts never crumble and the sails never turn to ash. On board, the silhouettes of a desperate crew can be seen scrambling in silent panic, climbing the masts as if to escape a fate that has already consumed them. It is a portrait of a disaster, a final terrible moment, trapped in a loop, replaying for generations of witnesses. This is the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. It is not a tale confined to a single, questionable account. It is a phenomenon documented for over 200 years, seen by sober lighthouse keepers, seasoned fishermen, families on the shore, and vacationers who had never even heard the legend. They all described the same horrifying spectacle. And in the early days, their first instinct was always the same: to launch a rescue. Boats would be rowed out with frantic speed, racing towards the burning vessel, only for the ship to recede into the mist or vanish into thin air, leaving the would-be rescuers alone on the cold, empty water. Even more chilling is the ship's reputation as a harbinger. For centuries, its appearance has been seen as a dark omen, a warning that a powerful storm is about to descend upon the strait. It is a specter that appears before the wind and the waves rise in fury. But what is it? Is it the tormented spirit of a specific vessel lost to the waves, its tragedy forever burned into the atmosphere? Could it be a complex trick of the light, an elaborate natural mirage explained by science? Or is it something else? A wound in reality that opens when the weather is about to turn. This is not just a ghost story, this is a historical investigation, a scientific inquiry and a cultural journey into the heart of one of Canada's most enduring mysteries. We will sift through the archives, examine the eyewitness accounts, explore the leading scientific theories, and seek the truth behind the phantom ship that appears before storms. It often begins just after dusk, or sometimes in the deep moonless dark of a night when the sea and sky have merged into one. The air is still, heavy with the scent of salt and the coming rain. A lone observer on the shore, perhaps a fisherman checking his nets, or a family finishing a walk along the beach, sees it first. A single point of light, far out on the water, where no light should be. It glows with an unusual intensity, a warm, golden hue that distinguishes it from the cold, distant stars. At first, it might be dismissed as a steamer or the lights of a town on the far shore. But it moves, not with the steady, predictable pace of a modern vessel, but with an eerie, deliberate glide. As it draws closer, the single light resolves into a fuller shape. It is a ship from another time, a magnificent 3-masted schooner, a vessel of a kind not seen in these waters for 100 years. Its sails are full, impossibly so on such a windless night, and it cuts through the water with a grace that is both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Then, the true horror of the vision reveals itself. The ship is on fire. The flames begin at the top of the mainmast, a brilliant crown of fire that licks at the sky. They do not spread like a normal fire, they simply appear, engulfing the sails in sheets of silent, orange light. The fire is impossibly bright, yet seems to cast no heat, and more unnervingly, it produces no smoke. The sails burn, but are not consumed. The ropes and rigging are wreathed in flame, but do not snap or fall away. It is a perfect preserved catastrophe. On the deck, figures can be seen, silhouettes of men, dozens of them, moving in a state of frantic, soundless panic. Some climb the burning masts, their forms stark against the glowing sails. Others run back and forth along the deck, their gestures suggesting screams that are never heard. One figure, often described as the captain, stands near the wheel, a stoic, dark shape watching his vessel's eternal demise. The ship will often sail a straight course along the strait, a spectral parade for those on the shore. Sometimes it moves directly against the prevailing wind, a clear violation of the laws of nature. It might stay in view for 10 minutes or for as long as an hour, a silent, blazing spectacle on the dark water, and then, as suddenly as it appeared, it is gone. It does not sink beneath the waves or sail over the horizon, it simply vanishes. Sometimes the flames extinguish one by one, leaving the dark shape of the schooner to fade into the blackness. Other times, the entire vision dissolves into the mist, leaving behind nothing but the rhythmic sound of the waves and a witness whose heart is pounding in their chest, forever changed by the sight of the burning schooner. The composite vision is built from the fragments of countless real experiences, stories passed down through generations and recorded in local histories and newspapers. These are not just legends, they are personal histories. In the year 1900, a report emerged from Charlottetown involving a group of sailors who saw the phantom ship so clearly that they were convinced a terrible disaster was unfolding before their eyes. They boarded their own small boat and rowed frantically towards the blaze. They described getting within a few hundred yards of the schooner, close enough to see the desperate activity on its deck, when a strange, cold mist descended. When it cleared moments later, the sea was empty. There was no wreckage, no sign of fire, no trace of the ship or its crew. There was only the chilling silence of the water. Decades later, the story repeats. A family driving along the coastal highway in Nova Scotia pulled over, their attention captured by a fire on the water. They watched, mesmerized, as the fiery ship sailed past. The father, a man who had worked the sea his entire life, knew immediately that what he was seeing was not right. The shape of the vessel was ancient, and its movement was unnatural. He later told a local journalist it was, quote, "a sight I will carry to my grave," end quote. He described a profound sense of sorrow that washed over him as he watched, a feeling that he was witnessing a tragedy that had already happened long, long ago. Perhaps one of the most credible accounts comes from the keepers of the lighthouse at Wood Islands, Prince Edward Island. Over the years, multiple keepers and their families have documented sightings from their high vantage point. In one famous incident, the keeper on duty saw the burning ship appear so vividly that he sounded the alarm. He and several local men from the village launched a dory, fully believing they were embarking on a rescue mission. They rowed for over an hour, the ship always seeming to stay just ahead of them. They reported seeing the crew in the rigging, their forms clear in the fiery glow. But as they got closer, the ship began to dissolve, the flames fading until the entire vessel became transparent and then disappeared completely. They returned to shore, cold, exhausted, and shaken, with no explanation for what they had witnessed. These are not the tales of lone, unreliable narrators. They are the collected, consistent testimonies of sober, experienced people of the sea, from different eras and different locations, all describing the same impossible burning ship. To understand the ghost, we must first understand the water it haunts. The Northumberland Strait is a body of sea approximately 225 kilometers long, separating Prince Edward Island from the mainland of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. In the summer, its waters are famously warm, its shores marked by red sand beaches and picturesque fishing villages, but this gentle appearance is profoundly deceptive. For centuries, especially during the Great Age of Sail, the strait was one of the most dangerous shipping lanes in North America. Its relative shallowness, which contributes to its warm summer temperatures, also creates a treacherous underwater landscape of shifting sandbars and unpredictable shoals. The weather here can turn with shocking speed. The shape of the strait acts like a natural funnel for wind, capable of transforming a calm sea into a violent, chaotic nightmare in less than an hour. Sudden squalls and powerful storms have been the doom of countless vessels, catching captains by surprise and driving their ships towards the shore. Even more feared than the storms were the sandbars. The most notorious of these, the Tryon Shoals, were a constantly moving hazard, a hidden threat that could rip the bottom out of a wooden hull. A ship could successfully navigate a channel one week, only to be wrecked in the very same spot the next. And then there was the ice. For several months of the year, the strait would freeze over or become choked with massive flows of sea ice. Wooden ships caught in the grip of this advancing ice were simply crushed, their timbers splintering under the immense pressure, sending their crews and cargo to the bottom of the frigid water. Because of these dangers, the floor of the Northumberland Strait is a ship's graveyard. Hundreds of documented wrecks lie beneath the waves, from small fishing schooners to large merchant vessels carrying timber and immigrants. Every coastal community has its stories of loss, of ships that sailed out and never returned. This history of real, tangible tragedy created a culture steeped in the perils of the sea, a place where the line between a memory and a ghost could easily begin to blur. The legend of the ghost ship is more than just folklore passed down through spoken word. It has a documented history, a paper trail that stretches back over a century. To find its origins, we must move from the water to the archives, to the fragile, yellowed pages of old newspapers. The first known written accounts of the phantom vessel begin to appear in the late 19th century, specifically in the 1880s. Local newspapers in Charlottetown and Pictou started to print stories not as fiction or legend, but as news. They were reported as factual events, eyewitness accounts from credible sources. These early articles described sightings by sea captains and their entire crews who would arrive in port, shaken, telling tales of a burning ship they had tried to approach. They were treated as maritime news, warnings to other sailors of a strange and unexplained hazard in the strait. As we trace this paper trail forward, from the 1880s into the early 20th century, a remarkable pattern emerges. The core details of the sighting remain incredibly consistent. A three-masted schooner, engulfed in flames that do not consume it, and its eventual, sudden disappearance. This consistency across different decades and different witnesses is what elevates the story. The act of unearthing these accounts from microfiche and dusty archives is an investigation in itself. It confirms that the story we know today is not a modern invention. It shows that for more than 130 years, people have been seeing the same inexplicable vision in the same stretch of water. This written record proves that the ghost ship is not just a simple campfire story, it is a documented phenomenon, a persistent mystery woven into the factual, written history of the region. The paper trail provides a foundation of evidence that demands a deeper investigation into what exactly these people have been seeing for so long. If the ghost ship is the echo of a real tragedy, then we must ask, which one? Out of the hundreds of ships lost in the strait, one name consistently rises to the surface. It is a vessel that has become the prime suspect in our historical investigation, the Isabella. The story of the Isabella is a haunting tale in its own right, a story that begins in the late 18th century. Records and folklore tell of a three-masted sailing ship that prepared to leave Charlottetown Harbor one autumn day. Its primary cargo was timber, a valuable export for the young colony. But according to the legend that has been passed down for generations, the Isabella was carrying something far more precious. On board were a number of Scottish families, immigrants who had come to the New World seeking a better life and were now on the final leg of their journey to a new settlement. The ship set sail, heading out into the Northumberland Strait. It was never seen again. No wreckage was ever found, and no survivors ever reached the shore. The Isabella, its crew and the families it carried were simply swallowed by the sea. The connection to the phantom ship comes from the details that folklore has attached to its disappearance. The story goes that a fire broke out on board, a catastrophic event that doomed the vessel. It is this element of fire, combined with the profound tragedy of lost families, that makes the Isabella such a compelling candidate for the ghost's origin. Is it possible that the fiery vision that haunts the strait is the spectral replay of the Isabella's final, desperate moments? The theory provides a powerful, emotional anchor for the legend. However, we must be cautious. Separating documented history from folklore is difficult after more than 2 centuries. While records of lost ships exist, the specific details of a fire and the presence of immigrants aboard the Isabella are harder to definitively prove. It remains a powerful piece of local lore, a story that provides a name and a face to a ghost, but one whose precise details are shrouded in the mists of time. While the story of the Isabella provides a possible origin, the most powerful evidence for the ghost ship phenomenon comes not from the distant past, but from the detailed accounts of professional observers. No accounts are more credible than those that come from the lighthouse at Wood Island's Prince Edward Island. For decades, the keepers of this lighthouse, men whose job it was to watch the sea with a trained and sober eye, recorded sightings of the burning schooner in their official logs. Their high vantage point gave them an unparalleled view of the strait, and their testimony carries significant weight. The most famous and well-documented of these sightings stands as the single most compelling event in the legend's history. On a cold night, the keeper on duty was scanning the horizon when he saw it. The unmistakable shape of a three-masted schooner, fully engulfed in flames. To him, this was not a ghost. It was a real ship in catastrophic trouble. He immediately acted, sounding the alarm to rouse the men in the nearby fishing village. There was no hesitation. Within minutes, a group of them had launched a dory, a small, sturdy boat, and were rowing out into the dark, frigid water. This was no casual observation, it was a full-blown rescue mission. The men rowed with all their strength, their eyes fixed on the burning vessel ahead. They reported that they were close enough to make out the details with stunning clarity. They could see the flames licking up the masts and the desperate figures of the crew moving on the deck. But the ship seemed to defy their approach. No matter how hard they rowed, it remained just out of reach. After a grueling pursuit that lasted for more than an hour, as they felt they were finally about to close the distance, the impossible happened. The ship began to fade, the flames extinguished as if snuffed by an invisible hand. The dark hull of the schooner became transparent, a ghostly outline against the waves, and then it dissolved completely into the night air. The rescuers were left floating in an empty sea. There was no debris, no smell of smoke, no sign that any ship had ever been there. They returned to shore, exhausted, cold, and profoundly shaken. They had set out to save a crew from a burning ship and had instead come face to face with a ghost. This event, witnessed by multiple reliable men who took physical action, remains the bedrock of the ghost ship legend, a case that defies any simple explanation. Having established the deep historical roots of the ghost ship, our investigation now pivots from the archives to the laboratory. We must ask a difficult question. Could this phantom, which feels so real to those who see it, be a product of the natural world? To answer that, we must first explore the strange and often misunderstood world of atmospheric electricity, beginning with a phenomenon well known to sailors for centuries, St. Elmo's fire. St. Elmo's fire is not fire at all. It is a weather phenomenon, a form of plasma or ionized air. It occurs when there is a strong electrical field in the atmosphere, typically during a thunderstorm or just before a major storm arrives. This powerful charge in the air seeks to discharge itself, and it is drawn to pointed, grounded objects. On the open sea, the most prominent pointed objects are the masts of a ship. When the atmospheric charge is great enough, it can cause the air molecules around the tips of the masts to glow, creating a luminous, fiery corona. Sailors throughout history have described it as a dancing, ethereal light, often blue or violet, that would cling to the rigging and spars of their vessel. It was often seen as a good omen, a sign of the presence of their patron saint, Elmo. Could the burning ghost ship be a massive, misunderstood display of St. Elmo's fire? The theory is tempting. The legend explicitly states that the phantom appears as a harbinger of storms, which is precisely when the conditions for St. Elmo's fire are perfect. The image of flames licking the masts and rigging aligns perfectly with how this electrical discharge behaves. It could explain the fire that burns but does not consume. However, this theory has significant limitations. Eyewitnesses consistently describe the fire as a brilliant orange or yellow, the color of a true blaze, not the typical blue or white of St. Elmo's fire. More importantly, this phenomenon only explains the light on the masts. It does not account for the solid, visible hull of the schooner, the full sails, or the most haunting detail of all, the silhouettes of the crew. It is a piece of the puzzle, but it is not the whole picture. This leads us to a much rarer and more mysterious phenomenon: ball lightning. Unlike the stationary glow of St. Elmo's fire, ball lightning is a mobile, luminous sphere of electricity that can appear during thunderstorms. It is one of the least understood phenomena in meteorology. Reports describe glowing orbs that can float, hover, and move erratically before vanishing. Could some complex interaction of atmospheric electricity, perhaps involving a form of ball lightning, create the illusion of a burning ship? It's a speculative leap. While ball lightning accounts for a moving, unexplained light source, there is no known scientific model where it could form and hold the detailed, stable, and massive shape of a three-masted schooner for any significant length of time. It remains a scientific curiosity, a wild card in the atmospheric deck, but it is far too unpredictable and rare to be a reliable explanation for a phenomenon witnessed for over 200 years. If simple electrical phenomena fall short, we must look to a grander, more complex trick of the light. The most compelling and widely accepted scientific explanation for the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait is a specific and powerful type of mirage known as a Fata Morgana. A mirage is not a hallucination, it is a real optical event. It is what happens when light bends as it passes through layers of air with different temperatures and densities. The most common example is the wet spot we see on a hot road in the summer, which is actually a mirage of the sky. A Fata Morgana is a far more dramatic and complex version of this. It requires a very specific set of atmospheric conditions, known as a thermal inversion. This occurs when a layer of cold, dense air sits close to the surface, with a layer of warmer, less dense air on top of it. The Northumberland Strait is a perfect natural laboratory for creating these conditions. Its cold ocean water constantly cools the air directly above it, while warmer air systems can easily pass over, creating a strong and stable thermal inversion. This layered atmosphere acts like a giant invisible lens. Light from objects far away, even objects that are physically below the horizon, can be bent and projected upwards by this atmospheric lens. When someone on the shore looks out, they see this projected image, which appears to be floating above the water, where nothing should be. This is where the explanation becomes truly powerful. A Fata Morgana doesn't just project an image, it distorts it. It can stretch, compress, and invert the image, creating fantastical, unrecognizable shapes. A small, distant fishing boat can be vertically stretched until it appears to have tall, shimmering masts. The lights of a town on the opposite shore, normally hidden by the curve of the earth, can be lifted into view and distorted into a row of flickering fiery light. This theory explains many of the ghost ship's key characteristics. It explains how a ship can appear out of nowhere and float unnaturally on the water. It explains how the lights could appear to flicker and dance like flames due to the constant atmospheric turbulence within the mirage. And most critically, it explains the vanishing act. A Fata Morgana is incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. A slight gust of wind can disrupt the delicate layers of air, causing the atmospheric lens to shatter and the image to disappear in an instant. This aligns perfectly with the accounts of would-be rescuers who watched the ship vanish before their eyes. The Fata Morgana provides a strong physical framework, but it still leaves a crucial question unanswered. How does a distorted, shimmering mirage of a distant fishing boat or town lights become interpreted with such consistency as a burning, three-masted schooner filled with a panicked crew? The final piece of the scientific puzzle is not found in the atmosphere, but inside the mind of the witness. This is the observer effect, a concept rooted in the science of human perception. Our brains are not passive video recorders. We do not simply see what is there. We actively interpret a constant stream of incomplete sensory data, and we use our experience, memory, and expectation to fill in the blanks and construct a coherent reality. One of the most relevant psychological principles here is pareidolia. This is the brain's innate tendency to perceive meaningful patterns, especially familiar shapes like faces and human figures, in ambiguous or random stimuli. It is why we see animals in the shapes of clouds or the man in the moon. It is a fundamental part of how our brains are wired to make sense of the world. Now, let us place a witness on the shore of the Northumberland Strait. They have grown up with the powerful legend of the burning ghost ship. The story is part of their cultural DNA. One evening, under the perfect atmospheric conditions, a Fata Morgana appears. It presents their eyes with a confusing, ambiguous image, a series of tall, shimmering, vertical shapes with flickering lights. The witness's brain, faced with this strange stimulus, immediately goes to work. It searches its vast library of patterns for a match. The tall, shimmering shapes are interpreted as masts. The flickering, dancing lights are interpreted as fire. The random moving patterns of light and shadow on the distorted image are seen as the frantic movements of a crew. The brain is not lying to the person, it is doing its job. It is taking the raw, confusing data from the mirage and fitting it to the most powerful and culturally relevant template it has: the legend of the ghost ship. This explains why the details are so vivid and so consistent across generations of witnesses. They are all interpreting the same type of optical illusion through the lens of the same powerful story. The legend itself creates the expectation, and that expectation shapes perception. Therefore, the most complete scientific explanation is likely a three-part process. A thermal inversion in the strait creates a Fata Morgana, a complex and distorted optical illusion. This illusion provides the raw material, the shimmering lights and tall shapes. The human brain, primed by centuries of folklore, then takes this ambiguous image and constructs the detailed, terrifying, and unforgettable vision of the burning ghost schooner. It is a perfect storm, where physics, atmosphere, and psychology meet. After exploring the eyewitness accounts, the historical records, and the scientific theories, we arrive at a deeper truth about the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. The phenomenon is more than just a mystery to be solved. It has become a vital part of the cultural landscape, an anchor that moors the present to the past and helps to define the very identity of this region. For the communities that line the shores of Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick, the ghost ship is not just a story told to frighten children. It is their story. It is a living piece of their heritage, a narrative that has been woven into the fabric of their collective memory for more than 200 years. In a world that is constantly modernizing, the legend serves as a powerful connection to the age of sail. It keeps alive the memory of the wooden ships and the iron-willed people who sailed them. It is a constant spectral reminder of the dangers they faced, of the profound relationship with the sea that once defined everyone's existence here. The ghost is a vessel of memory, carrying the history of the Strait's ship graveyard into the modern consciousness. This cultural significance manifests in countless ways. The story is preserved in folk songs sung in local pubs, in poems that try to capture its eerie beauty, and in the work of painters and artists who have been inspired by the image of the burning schooner. You will find its name and image used by local businesses, from motels to craft breweries, a testament to its deep integration into the local identity. It has become a piece of cultural shorthand, a shared reference point that everyone from the region understands. More than anything, the legend encapsulates the complex spirit of the Maritime provinces. It speaks to a deep respect for the power of the natural world, an understanding that the sea is both a provider and a taker. The ghost ship is the ultimate expression of this duality, beautiful and terrifying, a vision of history's tragedies played out against the backdrop of the enduring, mysterious ocean. It is a story that belongs to the water, and in doing so, it belongs to the people who live by it. A journey has taken us from the dark, windswept shores of the strait into the dusty pages of history and the complex world of atmospheric science. We have listened to the chilling testimonies of those who saw the impossible. We have searched for the real ship that may have inspired the legend, finding a prime suspect in the tragic story of the Isabella, and we have examined the elegant, compelling scientific explanation of the Fata Morgana mirage, a trick of the light, amplified by the power of human perception. So where does that leave us? Have we solved the mystery and in doing so extinguished the ghost's fire? The answer, perhaps, is no. To accept the scientific explanation is not to dismiss the phenomenon. In fact, the science is, in its own way, as wondrous as the ghost story. The idea that the very atmosphere we breathe can bend the fabric of our reality, creating a perfect, detailed illusion of a burning ship from another century, is a profound and magical concept in itself. The ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait endures because it exists at the crossroads of all these explanations. It is a historical memory, a scientific marvel, and a powerful piece of cultural folklore all at once. It is possible that a real ship, perhaps the Isabella, burned and sank, its story seeding the legend. It is almost certain that the unique atmospheric conditions of the strait create the optical illusion of a Fata Morgana, and it is undeniable that the human mind, primed by this powerful legend, interprets that illusion as the burning schooner. These threads are not mutually exclusive, they are woven together to create the rich tapestry of the legend. The truth of the ghost ship is not one single answer, but the sum of all its parts. In the end, it all comes back to that first unsettling sight, a light on the horizon where no light should be. Whether it is the echo of lost souls, a complex atmospheric mirage, or a story so powerful it can command our very perception, the phantom ship will continue to sail. It will appear on dark nights when a storm is brewing, a silent, fiery sentinel guarding the waters of the strait. And as long as it appears, people will gather on the shore to watch, to wonder, and to tell the story, ensuring that the light on the horizon never truly fades.